Welcome to another of my tabletop talks, and this one is about peaceful protests. I'm seeing in the UK people being arrested, and I watched an interview with the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, the service I proudly served in during the 1970s and the 1980s, and I have to say, I'm ashamed to be associated with them now. It really isn't good. I'm seeing in the US with mass deployments of military to safeguard the federal government doing a job that a huge number of people disagree with. Again, something's going wrong. Peaceful protests, as we've seen, go nowhere. Remember when millions, literally millions of people protested peacefully about going to war in Iraq or not going to war in Iraq? The government decided that they weren't going to listen to popular opinion, and they went ahead with a war that we now know for a fact was illegal, unnecessary, and pointless. It left a global problem with a huge number of deaths, leaving an entire country impoverished. It created millions of refugees and is still a source of instability in the region. No one listened to the peaceful protesters, and now there's no point. So some groups have decided to escalate peaceful protests because they weren't being listened to. They became disruptive. They closed roads, they caused inconvenience, and once again, instead of de-escalating that situation by listening to the points of view of those people protesting, those governments created laws which made those protests illegal. Now, I'm the first to admit that disruptive protests are also a bad thing, but I completely understand why they're necessary. Call them a necessary evil because no one is listening to voices of reason in peaceful protests. Something else had to be done. Now it's gone a step further and criminal damage is being caused because every time there's a peaceful but disruptive protest, along come the police and of course violence ensues every time. Then when there's violence, police need laws to protect against that. So more, stronger laws than the ones which already exist have to be crafted. Police get more power. Protesters get less opportunity to vent their dissatisfaction, something which is a basic human right. Now, I know there are going to be people out there who say, but Jerry, you live in China and protests aren't even allowed there, they're banned. Well, you're wrong. There are hundreds of protests every single day in China. I've linked a report to prove that. But the difference is, and I've said this before, the government comes out, finds out what's going on, and the matter is addressed. Not always resolved to everyone's satisfaction, I'll grant you that, but at least people know if they protest, then something will be done. No person in China is arrested for protesting. They might be arrested for the manner in which they protested or the reasons for which they protested, but if they have justification to protest, they will be heard and they will get some response from the government, the corporation, or the people that they have a grievance with. That is always the case. But if there are hundreds of protests every day in China, why aren't we reading about it? Why don't we know about it? Now, there's another great reason for that. We aren't being told about it because there's no blood or guts. There's no authoritarian crackdown and there's no brutal police responses. There's simply a resolution. One of the very few occasions when there is violence, you can be assured it'll be all over the Western media. And think about this. Where this happens, we've seen examples of violence in China, Hong Kong, Tibet, Xinjiang, even Taiwan. Now think about which foreign government has openly supported those four regions with millions of dollars, and you might start to see a pattern. Chinese people aren't violently protesting unless someone outside of China is paying for them to do it, and when they do, that's a coincidence, is it, that the BBC, CNN and others have front row seats to it? I don't believe that. Let's get back to the UK. What's made me so ashamed of my connection with the Metropolitan Police? A blind man was arrested with a sign saying, I support Palestinian action. A man in a wheelchair was arrested. An 83-year-old woman, a retired priest also in her 80s. These people are not terrorists. They're supporters of humanity. One lady was arrested for stating she does not support the prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist entity. She didn't say she supports Palestine Action or that she supports terrorism. She spoke out against a decision that her government has made that she disagreed with. Her human right. And this is a country where freedom of speech is sacrosanct, or at least it was. Certainly isn't now. People who complain that Chinese government monitors and surveils should be aware. A 13-year-old boy in the USA was very recently arrested for asking ChatGPT, "How can I kill a classmate?" Now, of course, that's a serious matter and he needed to be asked. But the matter that is ignored is that ChatGPT reported this boy to the police and we learnt about it. What other things are being recorded, registered, and reported that we aren't learning about? That boy was released without charge because it was found to be a prank. But it demonstrates that no matter what degree of privacy we think we have, there's always someone watching us. Big Brother just got real. And if we think the media will help us with this, we're wrong. In the US in the last 6 months, just in the US alone, there have been over 200 incidents of press being restricted, either by assaults, threats, arrests, denial of access, or having equipment seized. These reports aren't about citizen journalists or vloggers with cameras. These are over 200 registered, accredited journalists being prevented from keeping us informed. 12,000 people were arrested in the UK for some degree of online speech, which caused offence to the law. Now, this is far higher than either Russia or China, both of which have much larger populations and both of which are deemed by the UK as authoritarian. So when your country is writing laws that are progressively stronger and progressively eroding the rights you thought you had, you have every right to suggest that maybe you're living in an authoritarian state. When your country points at China and says, "Look how bad it is over there," when clearly it's not, they're deflecting from the reality of how bad it's become in your country. They have no right to accuse China of being so. Everyone in China knows exactly what they can do and what they can say because it's written in laws that have been in place for many years. Laws which haven't changed in many years because there's no need to change them. Laws that as long as 70 years ago the West started to call authoritarian, but laws which protect individuals, families, the government, and everyone in between. China isn't authoritarian at all. Remember that when your media and your governments attempt to deflect your attention away from the reality that your rights are actually being eroded. See you next time. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.